The strike team to New Phyrexia has been split. Planeswalkers flung and bruised by a barrier meant to interrupt their travels. Elspeth returns to the world that's taken so much from her, facing an enemy she still very much fears. Will their plan succeed? And how many of them are still uncorrupted? Hey everyone, I'm Simon and welcome to the Ether Hub and more Magic the Gathering lore. Today we continue the main storyline of Phyrexia All Will Be One. In the previous chapter, which you can find linked on this video or in the description below, we saw how some of the strike teams struggled with their first incursion into New Phyrexia. Notably how the Planeswalkers were scattered by some magical barrier and Nahiri was infected with glistening oil. Before we begin, if you're enjoying this series, please show your support by leaving this video a like, becoming a subscriber, and of course sharing it with your friends. Now let's continue with Chapter 2, Unstable Foundations, written by Shannon McGuire. Elspeth Tirel, like the other Planeswalkers of the strike team, encountered rough travels while planeswalking to New Phyrexia. The impact of this magical barrier left her battered and unconscious on the surface of this corrupted world. When she awakes, a feeling of dread overtakes her. She knew fear would be an obstacle, but being here again was almost too much for her. Her allies were nowhere to be seen. Maybe they had been captured, already lost to Phyrexia. Elspeth didn't have much time to mourn that possibility, as she spots a group of half-metal monstrosities approaching her. With Luxior in hand, the skilled warrior cut down 3 of the 6 ferocious beasts, but was finally starting to lose ground. Fear gripped her. A purple incorporeal blade cuts through another Phyrexian, Kaya, an ally. The rest of the enemies are dispatched easily. Kaya says that someone else's gear had somehow traveled with her, including ornate blades and a strange animatronic tanuki. Elspeth knew this device wasn't Mirrodin or Phyrexian. She guessed Kamigawan. Elspeth believed Kaya didn't fully grasp the danger of fighting Phyrexians. Even a small exposure could mean death. And exposure was all around them. Still, Kaya's levity and positivity was refreshing to Elspeth's pessimistic thoughts. Together they moved towards the Mirrodin camp, following Jace Belaren's plan using Elspeth's familiarity with the landscape to their advantage. They made their way to a Mirrodin dig site, where the troll, Thrawn, had discovered a way to peel through the multiple spheres that made up the plane of New Phyrexia. Each sphere was like another world unto itself, and climbing down one was like climbing up through another. The pair used these gravity-defying tunnels to venture into the quiet furnace, the fiery hell of New Phyrexia, and the final bastion of the Mirrodin resistance. Floating between spheres, they spot tents, a good sign. Phyrexians don't set up camps. It was the Mirrodin resistance, and possibly their lost allies, assuming they were still alive. They're greeted by beings coated in metal, but still full of life. A rebellious lot, the native Mirrodins. A deep voice calls out to Elspeth. To her gleeful surprise, it's Koth, her former ally and a dear friend. Together they had once fought for a free Mirrodin, only to fail. She presumed he had died in their failure, but was happy to find him just as resilient as ever. As they embraced with their reunion, Kaya too spotted a familiar face, or rather a familiar bare chest. It was Tyvar Kell. They quickly regrouped to discuss the status of their plan, whom among them were still fighting. Jace then appeared behind them. He had made it to the camp alone, having been separated when they originally planeswalked. The Mind Mage explained that the barrier they passed had severed their mind link, making communication across the plane impossible. He also explained that Vraska and Luca weren't with them when they woke up. The Wanderer seemed to have planeswalked away because of her unstable spark, while Jace says that Nissa too planeswalked away, but it seemed forced. Nahiri and Kaido were in the camp with them and appeared to join the others. Kaya reunited Kaido with his gear, including the Kami-filled mech, who chittered, as if he had returned home scurrying up to Kaido's shoulders. Jace takes charge, putting the group back on track. They had no time to daddle. Regardless of their numbers, they needed to attack now. The plan hadn't changed. Make it to the seed core sphere of New Phyrexia, find their corrupted world tree called Realmbreaker, set off the Silex at its roots, and end the Phyrexian threat to the multiverse. They had all the pieces in place. Victory was still possible. But what exactly would that victory cost? The Mirrodin human, Melira, Koth's dear friend and a being who can heal those infected with glistening oil, steps forward to hear more of their plan. Plainly, she asks Jace if this bomb, the Silex, would destroy all of their plane in an attempt to eradicate the Phyrexians. Though protecting the multiverse from the Phyrexians was deeply important, protecting her world was important as well. She fought to restore Mirrodin. She wouldn't willingly sacrifice it. Jace had calculated the blast radius. It shouldn't do much more than destroy the sphere of Realmbreaker, but he does admit he didn't fully understand the makeup of New Phyrexia. Melira educates her new allies on the structure of her home, its spheres. She uses Nahiri's lithomancy to create a display as a visual aid. At the center is the Seed Core, their target, Realmbreaker. Tyvar was visually uncomfortable at the thought of a corrupted version of Kaldheim's World Tree. Above that are the Mycosynth Gardens, the original fungus fields used to spread the Phyrexian corruption across Mirrodin. Above that, the Fair Basilica, the throne of Elesh Norn. This is where Urabrask and his rebellious Phyrexians would attack to provide a distraction. Above that is the Dross Pits, the domain of Shieldred. Next up is the Surgical Bay, the laboratories of Jin-Gitaxias. And further up, the Hunter Maze, the realm of Vorinclex. Next was the Quiet Furnace, the molten hell they currently resided. And still, there was another sphere above them, formerly called Mirix, the last remnants of old Mirrodin, which was now slowly being taken over by the Phyrexians. With this lesson, Jace recalculates. Not knowing how hollow these spheres were, or how much the Phyrexians had altered them, the Silex could very well tear the entire plane apart. Melira thanks Jace for his honesty. While she doesn't relish the thought of losing Mirrodin and all her loved ones, in truth, they had been fighting over ashes and graves for years. This was their final chance, a slim hope of a Mirrodin victory. They would press forward. Melira and Koth introduced the group to a new weapon they've been using in this war, a metal they call Hexgold. It was created from the old Glimmer Void of Old Mirrodin, treating the plates with Blinkmoth Serum. It was very rare, but proved powerful against the Phyrexians. Blades made of Hexgold seemed to cut easily through those infected, while its dust also seemed to slow or even prevent the spread of glistening oil, although this still was majorly just a theory. Tyvar used his unique magic to incorporate the Hexgold into his own armor and weapons, while Kaito had some of the Hexgold dust added to his Tanuki drone friend. Koth and Elspeth ventured together just outside the camp for a more private discussion. They expressed how they felt after their failed fight on Mirrodin years ago. Elspeth believed Koth had died, while Koth was always relieved that he was at least able to save her life. Koth tells Elspeth that he looks forward to fighting with her again, and maybe this time, dying alongside her as well. Elspeth is surprised Koth is joining them, but of course welcomes it, as she now feels their chances with him are much better. The friends embrace. Nahiri was also preparing to depart with the others, readying herself for what would surely be a challenging fight. She checks the wound she suffered when she first arrived. A blunt spike had grown under the bandage. She was infected, there was no doubt. But should she tell the others? They indeed needed her help. They were already down too many. What would they do? Kill her? Melira appeared behind Nahiri, noticing the spike. Melira had seen countless infected. She could practically smell the disease. She knew the Lithomancer had been corrupted. She could heal Nahiri. She was still very early on, and it was very likely to be cured. However, the treatment would take them both out of commission for days. Days their mission couldn't wait. Nahiri herself was needed as well. Melira tosses her a pouch of Hexgold powder, instructing her to place it on the wound. Doing so covered it in a flesh-like bandage, which Nahiri again covered in cloth. She even felt slightly better. It was a stopgap, but it bought them time. She could possibly be fully healed after their mission, but they shouldn't dally. Nahiri felt invigorated. Already being infected freed her to fight without regard for her health. New Phyrexia would see the full force of a daughter of Zendikar. Together the group gathered into carts, along with the Mirrodin Resistance and a demolition crew led by Koth. They would travel through the spheres and set off the Silex. They had to win. They had to. And there you guys go, the second chapter of Phyrexia All Will Be One story. From this chapter we finally have a bulk of the strike team together, with Koth and Elspeth's reunion being one of the strongest segments of the story. We continue to watch as Nahiri hides her infection from the others, but at least Melira has offered her some aid in her possible recovery. The use of Hex Gold along with Elspeth's Halo are the current weapons the Planeswalkers hope will turn the tide in their favor. And that's all despite them missing the Wanderer, Luca, and Nissa. Regardless, the group continues on. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you did, consider supporting the channel by leaving this video a like, becoming a subscriber, and of course sharing it with your friends. You can find the full playlist of Phyrexia All Will Be One linked in the description below. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, see ya!